My name is Pete Barlow. I'm running for Congress in CD6 currently, the current legal CD6 over across the mountain in Augusta County. I never intended to be a politician, and I mean that. I know everybody says that, but I mean that. But I still don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself someone who just wants to be a candid voice piece for the people, because that's something that we're sorely lacking, at least in Western Virginia, and I think y'all could say that here as well before you flipped it blue. So I am a product of 10 generations in the Shenandoah Valley. My dad's family came from Page County, 10 generations there. My mom's family, 10 or 11 in Augusta County in Rockingham. I was born and raised in Rockingham County, grew up working in our family's cabinet shop and then on beef and poultry farms. I feel like I understand farming better than the average Democrat, and that's going to be critical because farming, pop quiz, is the largest industry in Virginia. We have to be able to talk about it competently and with people who farmers understand the commodities markets and complex things about, and the average age of a farmer in Virginia right now is 61 years old. Only 8% of farmers are under the age of 35. That does not add up. We need to figure this out and figure it out quick. But anyways, I digress. I went to Bridgewater College right down the road, well, down the road if you're in Augusta County, and then I went to JMU and UVA for graduate degrees. After serving in the Peace Corps in Southeast Asia, I came back and worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, working with organizations like the National Rifle Association, the National Wild Turkey Federation, all sorts of agencies that represent Democrats and Republicans, people who just want to protect public lands access, make sure that we have clean water and clean air for the next generation, and protect our hunting and fishing traditions. So that was kind of my bread and butter until I started working at FEMA, where I was until last year when I got booted out by this administration's policy changes. And I was leading a team that was deployed for months to Helene in Western North Carolina, I was in Puerto Rico for a couple months working as a site inspector, just doing common sense work that was not waste or fraud. This was saving lives, infrastructure, and ultimately taxpayer dollars. So it was the opposite of waste. And that's what my experience has been with a lot of people who work in the federal government, like Paul, just doing common sense, practical work. And right now we see an administration whose singular focus is self-enrichment and enrichment of his peers, and isolation of all of us from the rest of the world economy, and arbitrary tariffs on our closest trading allies that are going to mean global isolation economically. That's what's going on right now, and I think we're all aware of that in this room. But so that's my background. But what I'm trying to do right now, over in the current 6th Congressional District, is start having conversations, because regardless of how this yes vote turns out and our redistricting goes down, we're going to have a strategy for rebuilding long-term relationships with our neighbors, or else we're just going to lose it all over again. It's not going to do much good if we get a bunch of freshmen in Congress just to lose them in 4 years. I'm trying to talk about how do we actually re-knit our communities. I feel like some of this money that we're spending on litigating in courts right now, we should be spending on potlucks and making sure that we knock on every single door, because right now there's a cacophony that's buzzing in the ears of my neighbors, and it's called Fox News, and we are not providing any counterpoint. And I really feel like we have to rebuild our relationships. We have to be able to have complex conversations with our neighbors, because they are not dumb. And we can't keep on talking over them and drawing lines around them, because that's not going to be any good for the long-term viability of rural Virginia or rural America. So that's what I really care deeply about. I'm trying to have those conversations, but also talk about the fact that we've we've had 430 people roundabout, you don't even know the numbers because they're hiding that from us, but taken out of their cars and their homes in Harrisonburg because we have vilified the people in the very bottom of society, people who are either immigrants or receiving Medicaid, those people making less than $21,500 a year, who are making 135% of the poverty line and are on Medicaid. 31,000 of those people in the 6th district alone are going to be kicked off of the Medicaid rolls next time. And a lot of those people voted for the other guy. And we're trying to have those conversations because people don't want to be talked down to. They're not completely voting against their own self-interest because they feel like they're voting for the tribe. And we need to make sure that we build back the tribe and show them that, we're going to build back the big tent. So I think that's essential. Also, I feel very deeply about some of these hot button issues, like abolish ICE. Well, it sounds radical, but it's not. Anybody ever heard of the Office of Agricultural Adjustment? No, because it was abolished. It outlived its utility. Anybody? I mean, there's tons of agencies that have been abolished. It's not radical to say that an agency that's outlived its utility and has begun, being a negative presence in our community should be done away with. So I think that we should be really honest with people about the fact, we need to get rid of that. And we need to get rid we need to codify same-sex marriage protections. We became complacent, and you see what happened to Roe v. Wade. We need to not be complacent anymore. We need to make sure that we codify that. We also need to codify things like the Dignity Act. Make sure that we shut down illegal border crossings, but also don't terrorize our immigrant community right here that undergirds our local rural economy. Things like the AWARE Act. I'm just trying to tell people about some of these things because they're out there. And we have senators and other people in our state who are not backing them. But the AWARE Act says we are not going to give appropriations to countries that are involved in humanitarian atrocities. I don't think that's too much to ask. I grew up in the Church of the Brethren. I'm a Mennonite now, and I just don't feel like what's going on in this country is a representation of my values. You don't have to be Christian, but we all agree on kind of core tenets of every religion or agnostic community. Those are things that we should all agree on. So I'd love to talk about that. I'm sure I irritated somebody with something I said, so please tell me about it. I'd love to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Do you want us to call you Pete, Mr. Barlow, something else?
Pete would be great.
Pete would be great. Well, thank you for your introduction, and it's an impressive background working for the federal government, so we do appreciate that. With that said, I thought I saw Roy. So what we do with this part of our town hall is we have our co-chair, Roy White, in the blue shirt, walk around and raise your hand if you want to ask Pete a question. Don't be shy, folks. It's been a shy crowd.
I'd like you to comment on the gun control bills that Abigail's been talking about and how you feel about that. I read something about Lynchburg sheriffs, I think it was a sheriff's association, freaking out about, taking away our Second Amendment right and how you feel about large capacity magazines and weapons of war.
Thank you. I'm going to be at a libertarian convention tomorrow, so I'm probably going to have a lot of gun talk. I really feel like the plain language reading of the Second Amendment has been misconstrued for decades, and that we should have common sense gun reform, because I was talking to a guy who came out to a meet and greet with me a couple months ago, and he said, I have guns, I'm a single issue voter, guns are my thing, and I'm not going to vote for you, but I agreed with everything else you said. And I said, well, that's too bad, you care more about guns than you do about your neighbors. But also, if you have guns if you have guns, this is what I told that fella, and you can imagine how it went, but I said, if you have guns to protect yourself against an oppressive government, well, I think that you should probably sell your gun, put a down payment on a drone, and park it on your front lawn, because you're not going to be able to hold this government off with a gun. So that doesn't really hold water for me. But I do think, so basically I do agree with the gun reform that she's proposing. I do think that it's wrong-headed, though, the tax on suppressors. I've gotten so much pushback on that from friends. Suppressors, ear, nose, and throat doctors will tell you that that's for public welfare and hearing. And the fact that we put a $500 tax on gun suppressors, that just makes us look out of touch. And it's not good for Democrats to do that. Like yeah, of course there was a $200 tax in Congress. They took it off. The Trump administration took that $200 tax off, and Abigail just proposed a $500 tax, and it's just pushing people away. It's poking them in the eye. And I think we need to talk about real gun reform. But even, I've looked up, because I want to educate myself, I looked up primary literature trying to understand, are suppressors actually associated with more gun violence? And what I found is, yeah, people use them in 20% of gun violence, but that's not associated with the gun violence. You know, that didn't, the gun violence is not predicated upon whether you have a suppressor or not. So it's just things like that I think we really need to think through, or else we're just going to lose the whole argument.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, please. Woman in the back, please.
I like the idea of potlucks. So what else do you think we could do to get our neighbors to be kind to each other again?
Well, I've jokingly told my next door neighbors that I'm going to come over to their house in the middle of the night with bolt cutters and cut their cable. Because I think we'd get along better. You know, I don't watch TV, I just listen. But anyways, we just joke about that. But I really do think that we need to have, I founded a river organization, North River Friends over in Bridgewater. I'm on the Friends of the Middle River and the Friends of the Shenandoah River. I think that getting people outside, having fishing tournaments that are sponsored by the Democrats, throw people on their back foot, do things that are unexpected, go to church gatherings and talk to people about their faith and how this federal administration right now isn't quite a representation of how you see that. But I think trying to intellectualize every conversation, we all know how that's gone. And our current conversation is not very respectful. So I do feel like we're going to have more conversations going to county fairs and livestock sales and things like that, and talking to people about the industries that are critical to them and their kitchen table.
I have a question over there.
Goodness gracious. I confess to not being as familiar with the important issues in the 6th district because I don't get across about that much anymore. So if you could just give us a brief description of what are the major issues and concerns that folks in the existing 6th district have.
Will do. And I do want to make some connections with Nelson, because Nelson, for instance, what are y'all, 80% wooded here?
Yeah.
The terrain is pretty high relief. I think about things like the FEMA experience that I have, and the fact, protecting, helping people before, during, and after disasters. How can you be against that? But this administration is, like they are against a lot of stuff. But thinking about an event like Helene and Milton coming up through Nelson County, that's why we need FEMA. Because there's no way that every church organization, every Rotary Club is going to get out there and fill the void that will be left when we don't have a federal administration trying to coordinate all of that relief. So, like Nelson, 70% of the 6th congressional district, the current 6th congressional district, I keep on saying that, is wooded. And I look at the terrain, I look at the infrastructure, the routes of entry, ingress and egress, and that is a catastrophe waiting to happen if something like Helene were to happen again and just get 200 miles further north. It came pretty far inland. It came all the way up to Giles County, which is right below the 6th congressional district. Another thing is the 6th congressional district is the driest part of the whole state. It's in a rain shadow on both sides. That doesn't seem relevant if you think about the fact that we've got 2 transatlantic fiber optic cables coming into Virginia, one up in northern Virginia, one through in Henrico, and Virginia's going to go from 75 million square feet of data centers this year to 300 million square feet proposed by the Virginia Conservation Network, says this, by 2031. Every single data center, the average data center utilizes 100,000 gallons of right now potable water per day, because we do not mandate that they have closed-loop cooling centers. If we do not mandate that they have closed-loop cooling centers, we are going to dry out. And 100,000 gallons, just to put that in perspective, I think your average turkey house over in the Shenandoah Valley uses about 20,000 gallons. So you're talking about 5 turkey houses that you're supplanting by every single average data center. Now, if you think about the fact that it's going to use up, right now they say about 25% of Virginia's energy grid is consumed by data centers. Well, they say that's going to double or more than double over the next 5 years if we see that kind of increase in square footage and we do not mandate on-site renewables or on-site energy generation. Those are huge issues, and that's specific to the 6th congressional district, but I need to learn more about how that would impact Nelson County. But I know that Charlottesville is going to see their share of data centers. Henrico sees a heck of a lot of data centers. And then the third thing that I'll just mention, back to farming, is that, well, also 81. 81 is this contiguous piece of infrastructure that runs all the way through the 6th congressional district. Our current representative, 72% of fatalities on 81 are car truck related, because we do not have a truck lane that's designated. That's something that Bob Goodlatte could have done, that Ben Klein could have done 10, 20 years ago, but they haven't, because they're not doing the bare minimum. I just think if you just wanted to keep your job, coast your way through, get your pension, stay in Congress for 40 years and make your millions, why not just do the bare minimum? But it's like they're not even thinking. But that's one thing. And then the final thing is farming. That's our largest industry in Virginia, largest industry by far in the 6th congressional district. We don't have any dairy processing plants in the 6th congressional district. That's egregious, because we used to have Shenandoah's Pride. Shenandoah's Pride was bought by White Wave. White Wave was bought by Danone. Anyways, now Danone processes more almond milk in the Shenandoah Valley than it does dairy milk. We're shipping in almonds from 2,500 miles away, and we're shipping out dairy to Pennsylvania and North Carolina. We could be keeping that all in state, but it just doesn't make any sense. And Ben Klein could be investing in local dairy processing. He could be investing in local beef processing, but he's not. Meanwhile, they're vilifying our entire immigrant workforce, and that represents 80% maybe of our processing of poultry. So every one of these industries is just getting kind of crapped on because we have people who are just inept in Congress. I just don't know another way to say it without using curse words. It's just ridiculous. So those are some things. Thank you for asking about that. Sorry for the long answer.
How about I jump in with one quick question? Thanks again for coming here on a Friday night. I'm a veteran, and the other veterans in the room, we got a couple. President Trump and VA Secretary Collins have proposed through the Republicans in Congress privatizing VA. And there was a vote last year to privatize some VA jobs. In other words, doctors working for VA would be let go, and those veterans, patients would be sent to the private sector for care. VA care is faster, it's better, and it's less expensive. And that's because over the last 30 years or so, a lot of funding has gone into VA. If elected, would you vote to fully fund and fully staff VA? In other words, prevent privatization of VA.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service, everybody. See you back there. My dad was in the military. He was in Vietnam and came back, and he led a good life working for the state. But then he got diagnosed with Agent Orange with Lewy bodies back about 25 years ago, and then for the next 10 years we had to take care of him at home. So I know that war doesn't just stay there. Your service kind of sticks with you, and it really stuck with Dad. So I appreciate that. But yeah, anybody on Medicare in the room? Would you rather have private health care, or would you rather have Medicare? Okay. The public option is much more efficient, and it makes more sense. So the fact that they're trying to privatize that, they're trying to privatize emergency management, they're trying to throw that to the contractors, everything. But yes, I would totally vote to fully fund VA, because what we lost 9,000 nurses from the VA last year alone. I'm trained as a nurse. I don't think nurses were wasting anybody's money, but for some reason at the Salem facility, hundreds were let go. It's egregious, and it doesn't make any financial sense.
Well, related to that, and first my thoughts to your dad, and welcome back from his service, is this. There was a law passed in 2022, and I can't believe it's 4 years ago, called the PACT Act. And the PACT Act extended health care and disability benefits for veterans suffering from poisoning from Agent Orange, Gulf War illness veterans like me, burn pits from Iraq and Afghanistan, radiation poisoning, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And McGuire and Klein both voted to cut 20 some odd billion dollars in the PACT Act spending. So for the veterans here, and there's a reporter in the room too. Sorry, I had to ouch it. He's a great guy, by the way. We met before. Would you work to restore funding so that for the PACT Act, so that veterans who are sick from the poisons of war get the care that they need?
Certainly. I need to learn more about how that would happen, and if it's still just waiting for people to endorse it. But yeah, I think that's really something that we need to get behind.
And then this is where I turn it back over to Roy. I see some hands going up in the back.
I don't think I need a microphone. I have two questions. I really hear you say out loud that you are totally against data centers. I am totally against data centers. Any more being built in Virginia? And are you of that mindset, or are you willing to try to work with them? I think they're going to screw all of us, and I've done a lot of research into that, and I want to know what your position is on that. And my second question is, do you already have a winning social media strategy set up? so that you can win?
I'm asking people in rooms like this to share my posts on Facebook, trying to make sure that that gets out there. We have been on social media everywhere we can. So I hope it's winning. The numbers are going up, but yes, for data centers, I'm against them. I totally am against them. In Botetourt County, however, they are offering $35,000 per acre for data center spots. A farmer who has a $4,000 to $6,000 threshold for land acquisition is not going to be able to compete with that. So I'm trying to talk about solutions to at least put guardrails, because I feel like, yes, I don't want them to come, but they're coming. And I don't know what to do about it other than to say, we have to get around our water. We have to make sure that Virginia has surface water cooling mandates so that they can't be dumping hot water into trout streams. I'm a trout fisherman. Anybody else in here? Yeah. We need to make sure that we are not, and also these data centers coming in, a lot of localities, well, Loudoun County gets $500 million a year from data center profits alone. It's going to be hard for any municipal elected officials to push back on that when they think short-term gains, I'm going to look good. And so I really hope that you all, with your advocacy, can get behind that and tell your local folks that it's not worth it. Because in the end, you're going to have a lot of wells are going to start going dry. Things like that, they're not going to be able to make up for that. And so that's one thing. But then the other thing about data centers is, well, I lost it. Anyways, yeah, I'm against it.
Well, we're going to subsidize their electric bill.
Thank you. Subsidies. We are letting data centers come in. They don't have to pay sales tax when they're building their facilities or when they're there. We're subsidizing an industry that's going to ultimately take our jobs away. I mean, this just seems so wrong-headed, but I don't think that tax revenue is going to supplant all the loss that we'll experience as a result of an unfettered AI industry that is being incentivized to come in and take all of our jobs. So that was the last part. Thank you.
What about requiring them to pay for their own infrastructure necessary to serve their use of the electricity we're all trying to use too?
I think that's a great place to start. I just think that right now, local elected officials are unchecked. They think that we are uninformed to the point where they want to sweeten the pot for the data centers to come in so that they can get the tax revenue, so that we can get the tax revenue, but you know how that works. So, yeah, it's a really, really messy game, but I agree with you. Could I just say one more thing? Hidden costs of energy. So I don't know if y'all are on Dominion over here. Is it Dominion? CBEC. Sorry. Well, we've got Dominion, and then we have Shenandoah Valley Electric Cooperative. You might want to check out the hidden costs, because, like, of course, utilities. I learned all about this the other day when I was listening to some stuff and then read up on it later. If you look at the hidden costs in electric utilities, it's incredible. Like, electric utilities have to sell their electric for no more than what it costs to generate that electricity, but they get a return on equity for all of their equity investments, and that's usually 16 to 17%. So they're doubling rates of return on the market with all their investments. And that's why our rates, that's part of the reason all of our rates keep on going up, that data centers. So, and I see the utilities, at least Dominion, SDEC, give money to both Winsome Earl Sears and Abigail Spanberg, because they know whoever gets in office is going to appoint the utility commission And the utility commission is going to set that return on equity rate. That's a hidden cost that we don't usually know about, but I've just been trying to educate myself because I'm like, why in the world did my electricity bill go up 47% this year in January? It was cold, but that's a lot. So, anyway.
Question in the back, please.
Let me take you to international relations right now. We have basically given an unlimited number of weapons to Israel to destroy Gaza. And it looks like we'd like to go play in Iran and see if we can do the same thing. If you're elected to Congress, where do you stand on Gaza? And where do you stand on the president being able to have unfettered use of the military to go pop people whenever he's in the mood?
Well, the international law of the seas has been broken numerous times by this president going in and bombing people that supposedly had drugs on their boat, but the drugs must have been vaporized because it's all gone now. But then we think about, I mentioned the AWARE Act earlier. We need to ratify the AWARE Act. The AWARE Act is a bill that's proposed in, I believe it's Senate Bill 3634, the AWARE Act, that would say we're not going to appropriate any more funds to support nations that are involved in humanitarian atrocities. And it's directed at Israel. And it's saying, we are not going to give you any more money. We're not going to give you any more assistance if this continues. Because nobody in this room wants their tax dollars going to, thermobaric weapons. Have you heard about this? Thermobaric weapons have been used in Gaza, and they have vaporized large communities of people. This was a article I shared from Al Jazeera on my Facebook page, but it is corroborated information that we've been giving weapons that will vaporize other people around the world to Israel. So, I think we should really stop that. And then soft power needs to really come back. The Department of State has been torn apart. I've got good friends who are working at USAID. They weren't perfect. FEMA's not perfect. U.S. Fish and Wildlife's not perfect. But they're doing a lot of good around the world. And to just think that whole communities that were depending on antiretroviral drugs are now just thrown out to pasture because of ideological divides in our country is really sad. So I'd love to hear from y'all though about that. I'm sure there's a lot more experience than what's in my head.
Go ahead.
I need a scooter.
I'm wondering about impeachment. I think there's, mountains of evidence that would warrant it, but would it be wise if we get the House?
I don't think it would be wise, but I think when it comes to the law, we have to be the party of law and order. If the law dictates that we indict someone and then they are criminally charged with a crime, I don't think that we should play politics with that decision. So I really feel like I know that it might not be the wise thing because we might piss off a bunch of our neighbors. But in the end, if he broke the law, I would side.
He has broken the law.
Oh, yeah.
And going to war in Iran without going through Congress obviously is an impeachable offense. But what do? Is there any other way to bring him in if we take the House as opposed to impeachment?
Well, I think totally if we take the House, we can filibuster everything and make sure that he's a lame duck for 3 years. But the country's already, Congress already has a 15% approval rating. So we really need to make sure that we get to work finally. And I would say impeach him. Let the chips fall. But if he's broken the law, that's the nation we live in. These people who were storming through the Capitol, spreading their feces on the walls, I think they should all go back to prison because that's still a hallowed institution. I don't know if it's wise, but I know that I would vote for it.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted to-
Roy, there was another question? Thank you.
She asked my question.
I'm a retired nurse, both in the private sector and in the Virginia Medical Reserve Corps, so I feel like I really know that what I'm saying is true. The cuts to Medicaid will absolutely devastate not only the main group of people that are affected, but more than anything else, the mentally ill. What plans do you have to change that?
Yeah, well, just real quickly before I say what I'll do, Ben Klein, our current representative, that's representative name only, I call him a rhino. But he really touts the $50 billion rural healthcare, whatever, what do they call it, a savings account or something that they're going to make all the states now compete for. But he signed it. He voted yes on a bill that took away $1 trillion. If somebody takes $1 out of your hand and gives you a nickel back, we all know we got screwed. But for some reason, he's able to con people into thinking that that's some sort of good thing that he just did. And we really need to call them out on the carpet for that, because it will have the lasting impacts. 31,000 people, like I said earlier, in the 6th Congressional District will lose Medicaid because of that bill. 21% of the district is dependent on Medicaid. I don't know what that number is, but it's critical. And I've got friends who are disabled. A couple girls I go to church with who will never be able to hold a job, but now these work requirements are going to kick them off the books, or else they're going to have to just jump through bureaucratic hurdles to keep their Medicaid. My wife is a Medicaid nurse. She goes around to different people who are living in Motel 6 hotel rooms, cooking off a hot plate, living 3 people to a room because they can't afford an apartment, because the apartment requires a credit score and 3 proofs of reference and all this stuff, and they'll never be able to jump back on that train. But they're both holding down jobs, and this is all around us. There are people living long-term in motels and hotels all around the region, paying, these people are paying $800 bi-weekly at a Motel 6. She told me about this the other day because it just tears her up to see this every day. She has to visit these people, and she's given a caseload, like at the hospital. When I was working at the hospital, nurses have a caseload of four people to a nurse at the at UVA, 6 to 1 at Centera. Well, she's got a caseload of 135. That's how we treat poor people. And that's what we keep on doing. So this whole left versus right color war that we keep on fighting, it's top versus bottom. It always has been. Yep. And what I would do is I would make sure that we have, the military, $1.4 trillion, and Medicaid just got slashed. I think that we should actually audit the military. Audit some of these agencies that are just getting ungodly amounts to do things like make the F-35 Lightning that we're never going to use, that we've spent $2.5 billion on. Well, that would make Medicaid solvent for the next 3 or 4 years. But just that one military program. So while I think that we need hard power and soft power throughout the world, if we do not get our ducks in a row and our communities back talking together and make sure that people are staying on preventative health care that is pennies on the dollar, like Medicaid, then it doesn't matter if we have foreign policy, if we don't have domestic policy. So, hope that's an answer. Is that an answer? Was that the answer?
It's a start.
Okay, it's a start.
All right, Pete, I'm going to hop in here real quick. The Supreme Court last week finally sort of said no to the president on tariffs.
Yeah.
We know tariffs are a tax. They increase prices that consumers have to pay. What are your views on what the Supreme Court did to stop Trump, what Trump did to have tariffs, and then what you would do if you were elected?
I mean, Article 1 says that representatives in Congress and the Senate should be tariffing. They should be imposing, they should be taking, they should have power of the purse. They should be imposing a due process, habeas corpus, and making sure that we have war powers for Congress. All these things are an abuse of power by the executive branch. But right now we have a Congress that is inept, that is impotent, and I don't quite know why. You know, they either want to be effective and time limited, or they want to have a lifetime appointment and be fairly innocuous. And that's the choice that's the path they've gone down.
You're mentioning a good point. How many town halls has, what's that guy's name there? McGuire. The number is?
0.
How many candidate town halls have the Nelson County Democrats held so far? 3. And how many more are we gonna hold? 2 more? And then a forum for, we're gonna hold 6 times, we're gonna hold 6 and he's gonna have 0. Okay, so I was gonna say it can't be 6 times that because the reverse math doesn't work. That right, all the math people stop.
It would with Trump though.
So you're here telling us your views on some of these, and that Congress has the power of the purse and the power to tax and set the tariffs, and Trump's doing it. And Congress has the power to declare war, but Trump's doing it. And Trump is eliminating these agencies, but it's Congress that's supposed to do that.
And may I say,
That's the message.
Trump is 81, right? Isn't he 81?
He'll be 81.
He'll be 80.
He'll be 80.
My
80.
mom is 79. She's pretty spry. But I would not trust her to run, you know, like a whole agency. She wouldn't want to. Like, I just can't believe that they're ceding all this power, all this collective wisdom, or so they say wisdom, collective wisdom of Congress to this one dude who, like he's, well, anyways, it just blows me away.
Tell us how you really feel. We got a couple of more questions. I got right over here, please.
I see on your handout that protect our forests, rivers, and lands is your second item you put here. And I personally find that refreshing because usually politicians put it at the bottom, if at all. And I feel like we need to protect our natural resources. Agriculture is our biggest industry. Tourism and forestry is our second and third biggest industry. So even if you don't care about nature, it's our economy, stupid. And would you please comment why you put that as your second item on your handout?
Yeah, I got my first master's at JMU in environmental microbiology. And I wanted that to be my life. I wanted to go out and sample streams and try to get the cows out of the stream, make sure that we all had potable water. I'd love to make a big, if we ever make enough money in our campaign, I'd like to make a big sign that has just somebody pooping in somebody's pool, because I think that's the same as having cows just crapping in my stream where my wife's pregnant. We're going to have a little girl swimming in that stream at some point, and I want to make sure those cows get out of there. Like, that's not too much to ask. So that's where I started. Then I went to work for Virginia State Parks. I went down to Douthit and worked there for 3 or 4 years, and then went to the Peace Corps, worked in environmental management, trying to build back fish cages out in the middle of the ocean with Filipino people. So that was my life, and since then I've been working on, most recently, leading a team at FEMA trying to make sure that we do hazard preparedness and hazard mitigation to prepare for a changing climate. Just knowing that if you can't beat them, you got to join them. And the climate is getting worse. We're not doing anything about it. We pulled out of Paris. We did all these things, and I feel like in this area, the Shenandoah Valley is one of those few places in the United States where you're 20 minutes from a national forest. It's 4 million acres. You're 20 minutes from a world-renowned national park where my granddad came up here and built the park back in the 1930s with the CCCs. So, like, I've just kind of been immersed in that and been working with river conservation my whole life. So I love to paddle, I love to go hunting, and I love to get away from it all, and that's my way of doing it. So maybe it's just selfish that it's number 2, but I like that. Thank you for asking.
Now I have to ask you that Democratic Party question. You ready?
Let's go.
Okay. Regardless of what district you're in, Pete, if another candidate should win, would you be supporting and helping out the Democratic nominee so that the districts we have, if it's 5th or 6th, turns blue?
Yes.
I like these short answers. We got a politician to give a good candidate to give a one-word answer.
Yeah, go.
Okay. Let's, Roy, any other questions?
Yeah, I do have one. I'm up here at Trump, so I don't think like that. What is your political background for your life? I mean, have you been everywhere, or you've been a Democrat all your life?
Oh no, I've always, and my grandmother sat me up in her barber's chair when she was young, or when I was young, and she said those Republicans have never done anything for your family, so you better not ever vote for them. Because she came from poverty, and she'd come out, and she was an FDR girl, and she believed wholeheartedly in the fact that her family wouldn't have gotten anywhere if it wasn't for Democrats. And my granddad, like I just mentioned, he came up from Norfolk in the 1930s, in 1933, and the only reason that he was able to find a job during that dark time in the Depression was because FDR put him to work building the Parkway. And he and Grandma met one weekend when he was down cruising the streets in Stanley. And then on this side, on the other side of the mountain, my mom's family was always Blue Dog Democrats, farmers who just wanted to be left alone. And I don't think our parties are quite as cut and dry as they used to be. But I think that we could build back the big tent of the Teddy Roosevelt, who was a Republican, but he stood for land conservation, making sure that everybody served their country, but that we had common sense agencies in our government. And then FDR, who came along, and he gave us rural electrification, and he gave us the TVA and all these things that were the big tent. And if we could just build that back, and that's why I want to talk to farmers, because I think, man, if Ben Klein, these guys, they're not doing anything, that's a real opportunity for the Democrats to actually galvanize a whole generation of farmers and give them dairy processing and give them beef processing and make sure that we understand the commodities market. Right now, anybody know within 10% what the average size of a farm in Virginia is? 187 acres. 187 acres. In the Farm Bill, farms get subsidies, but those are corporate subsidies. None of those subsidies are coming to Virginia farms. And when the Democrats were in charge of all 3 branches, we didn't do shit. And when the Republicans have been in charge of all 3 branches, they haven't done shit either. We need to make sure that we actually are building back prosperous rural lives for people, and then we won't have to worry about this whole gerrymandering thing ever again. We will coherently, we will genuinely win people back with a winning message. So I feel very, I mean, it sounds a little naive maybe, but I feel very passionately that we have a winning message. We just need to preach it loud and clear. So,
Thank you.
Roy, did you see any other hands go up? Okay, well, yeah, we'll wrap this up. With that said, I want to thank everybody here for your questions and being very friendly, and I really want to thank you for coming. So what I'd like to do for the next 5 minutes or so, a couple of issues came up. If you want to extend any of your remarks or have any closing message that you want to share, the floor is yours, Pete, and we thank you very much for coming.
thank you. Thank you all, really. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to this guy who came from over the mountain. I know we don't trust each other across the mountain. But I'm just kidding. But I am very passionate about this, and I think that we, like I just said, I think we have a winning message. And there's a gentleman, his name's Salam Bhatti. He is a congressman or running for Congress up in CD1, I believe, in Virginia. So in Virginia, just northern Virginia. But he wrote a very articulate piece recently about the fact that and I'll just kind of summarize, but we are going to have a blue wave. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. We're going to have a blue wave in November, and we could either, but the primaries dictate the shade of that blue, whether it's going to be a mediocrity or whether it's going to be a real substantive progressive change. And right now we have in Virginia these primaries, and 20,000 people about in our district, 20,000 people in y'all's district, I believe, are going to dictate who the ultimate candidate is who makes it on the ballot. The primaries, I just want to drive this home, the primaries are critical to candidates who are talking about real progressive agendas, but might not be career politicians, might not be celebrities. So we need help. And so find the candidates that you believe in, who you feel are talking about the structural changes. We're not talking about Bondo on the car. We're talking about changing that chassis. And those candidates are the people who need your help right now, so that we make a big blue, dark blue wave in November and talk about, I signed on to the Take Back Congress PAC. It is a PAC that says we are going to band together. We can't do it just one person, but we're going to band together 50 people around the country have said, and institute term limits. We're going to overturn Citizens United. We're going to make sure that the revolving door of Congress to lobby can't happen. We're going to put a 5-year moratorium on that. We're going to say insider trading, y'all can't know more about stocks than we do and still be trading. And we're going to make sure that we have judicial transparency for once in our lives. We're going to be able to see how they actually make those decisions and talk about some of that stuff. But those structural changes have to occur, or we're just dealing with a country that's going through deferred maintenance. And I'm tired of that. I know that y'all are. So we really need to engage in the primary. So I know that y'all are engaged. I'm preaching to the choir. But please get that message out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.